Minglaba. Today I'm going to talk about the cycle of conditioning, which is moment to moment cycle, um, which I have elaborated. It's very similar to the Paticca Samuppada, the big cycle of dependent origination in Theravada Buddhism. But this is moment to moment cycle of suffering, which I call cycle of conditioning, because we get into this cycle once and we are doomed. Almost you repeat the cycle again and again and again all your life until you find a way to exit the cycle. Okay, now in our practice of mindfulness in daily life, the goal I had talked about, the goal is to develop equanimity or upekkha. So to be able to do that, we have to peel off like 3 layers of conditioning or filters. And these are likes and dislikes, judgments, and clinging. So there are 3 layers to peel off or transcend. And it is a big issue because we have lived with these since we were little. You know, I'm 80, I've been conditioned 80 years. Most of you, will be 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, so on. And so how to transcend these conditioning or habituation. So it is very hard because, throughout the day we have a multitude of emotions arising and falling. So which emotions or which mind states to choose to transcend? So according to the Buddha's training or teaching, I have set out this cycle, which I call cycle of conditioning or suffering, because we suffer through this cycle every day or every moment. Okay, now, if you look at the cycle, on top of here of the cycle, you have the 5 senses plus the mind avenue, which are thoughts, emotions, fantasies, imaginations, you name it. And contact, well, contact with what? I'm sorry I didn't put it down here. It's contact through your 5 senses plus your own mind, 6 sense. The 5 senses is through to the environment. Whatever environment impact that comes at you, there will be a point of contact, okay, which in Pali is called phassa. Okay, now you're listening to my voice. As soon as you hear my voice, the first impact is contact. Okay, that is the point where the mind is a bit stirred up. Okay, and in that we follow the process of the mind. Now, in terms of Theravada Buddhism, of course, this is not psychology. That may seem it's psychological terms that I may be using, but this is from Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, and we will be talking about how to practice moment to moment in transcending these filters or conditionings through the teaching and training of the Buddha, okay, through mindfulness practice. Okay, now, after phassa or contact, the mind is shaken a little bit, okay, and that arises consciousness. In Pali, it's called vijnana. Some of you who have studied Buddhism will know about that. So vijnana is just knowing, the act of knowing. There's no discrimination as yet, whether it is black or white out there, or people or animals or anything like that. So there is just the knowing, but this is very fast. Of course, I'm talking about nanoseconds, and it's billions of thought moments have passed. Anyway, so as soon as the mind is waken up to what's out there or what is impinging on it, the next moment the mind starts to what do you call perceive. Perception arises, which in Buddhism we call it Vedana, and the Vedana arises. The Vedana, the sensations that start to happen, Vedana is sensations. We say the sensations is set up through the impact of contact, and the Vedana or sensations could be emotional or physical. So whether it is emotional or physical, the Buddha discriminates only in three ways. Whether it is pleasant, the sensation is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Okay. Now, this is not going to stay as it is. It's going to progress or proceed. So the next phenomena that happens is we will put a value judgment on these sensations. Okay, pleasant, we like it. Unpleasant, we don't like it, right? And neutral will stay neutral. But then here, I'll continue with the cycle up to here. So from liking, it can develop into desire, right? And from disliking, it can progress to resentment. Okay? Neutral will stay neutral or not. Okay? But then these three processes are interchangeable. Okay? They are not static. They are not written in stone. Okay? What you like one moment, you may dislike the next moment, or the next day, or a few years down the line. Okay, yeah, I used to be binging on ice cream. Now I don't really care that much. So these Vedanas and the judgments will move from one path to the other. But mostly this happens very fast, that normally we go through half this cycle very quickly. Then, for example, at desire and resentment, when the cycle goes on and on and on, then we start to cling. That's a conditioning. Okay, that's depends on your own prerogative. But then the normal process is that when an emotion or a mind state go on, on and on and on, again and again, repeatedly, we tend to unconsciously cling to it. But again, we can also consciously cling because, music, food, anything in life that we tend to, repeatedly like it. Then because we want, in clinging, why do we cling? It's because the memory of that pleasant sensations. Is that true? Okay. All right, now, say my biggest clinging now actually is balachang. That's a Burmese sort of, dried, fried dish. Now, why do I like it? Why do I remember it? Because I'm not eating balachang now, but then if somebody said balachang or mohinga, my eyes lit up. Okay, yeah, because these are, tastes of food that I love since my childhood. But I'm not tasting it now, but it's the memory of it. The memory of enjoying it is what keeps coming back. So I'm liking the memory, right? And then the memory becomes the object of liking and attachment. Right? So, and just to, have some humor with my American friends, whereas all of my American students love mohinga, or they are, what do you call, clinging to mohinga and lepet. Okay, these are two things. Yeah, this is how clinging happens. Okay, now on the left side, the emotions or the mind states are not so severe as yet. They're pretty soft. But if they continue repeatedly over and over the cycle, they can intensify. For example, desire can intensify as greed, and then it'll go on to craving, right? And here they might end up obsessing about it, an addiction. Okay. Okay. Now, if you look at the outer cycle, resentment, and if you cling to the resentment, it can turn into anger and hatred, and then it might end up as obsessive hatred. Now, and the neutral will either continue as neutral, or it can go either way, right? Or the outer cycles can also end up as neutral, depending on what happens in the mind. Okay, now let's get into how we practice. Now, in our mindfulness practice, we want to watch different mind states, especially on the left hand side, because this is a softer mind state. See, so it's easier to exit that cycle through these softer mind states. Now, for example, our first practice is watching our likes and dislikes and neutral. Okay. Now, that's our first practice. The second practice is to watch our judgments, good, bad, Then the third practice is to watch our clinging. Yeah. So all these can happen on the left side. Well, the mind states are pretty soft and changeable. Now, if we get to the right hand side, that's pretty strong emotions then. For example, anger, greed, hatred, and then obsession. This is the right hand side part of the cycle is very difficult to exit when you get in sort of swimming in this part of the cycle. Therefore, the practice that we teach is on the softer states, which is on the left hand side. Okay. And so, but look, if you look at the inner cycle, this is to explain or denote that when we are swimming in this cycle over and over again throughout our life, we end up with unwholesome speech, unwholesome actions, and unwholesome thinking. Now, and these are based, the unwholesomeness is based on our delusion, ill will, and greed, because we build up the ill will and greed here. Okay. Now, what about delusion? What is delusion? In terms of Buddhism, it means that you don't really know what's happening in you. Okay? We always say whatever happens in us is always right. If you're angry, you're right to be angry because somebody, really harms you or, provokes you. So we think that what we are doing through anger is right. But on the whole, are we really right? No, because a lot of harm would be done. Harm to oneself, harm to relationships. Well, outside the family, okay, you can still say it doesn't matter. I don't have to continue with this person or persons. But when it is in the family, you can't really cut off your children. You may do it for a while, but then, in the Burmese society, we always say, oh, you can cut off, disown your children, but then when they have children, your grandkids, then you can't help it. So that's the delusion. We think we can cut off, we can do away with things. But anyway, so the delusion is, again, not knowing what's happening in us, okay? Not knowing that we are swimming in this cycle and we are causing a lot of harm to ourselves and to those around us. Especially if you're a leader of a community, of a company, of a big nation. I mean, it can ripple out, in so many ways. Right? And so anyway, there's one about delusion. Let me talk a little bit about delusion because it's quite funny. Yeah, I was up in Nevada City teaching a retreat with about 20 Americans there. And they asked me, what is delusion? So I asked them, okay, how many of you are perfectionists? And I can tell you there's like 2/3 of hands came up. Yeah. And I said to them, that's delusion. Okay. There is no such thing as perfection. It's a deluded thinking or deluded, way of looking at yourself or others. But of course, in Buddhism, there is one perfect state, and that's achievement of Nibbana or Arahantship. And that is a perfect state. Well, we don't want to get into that, maybe some other time. Okay. All right, let's go back to this cycle. So, in training my students, after the first two preliminary practices of staying in the moment and staying with the peace, watching the peaceful states of mind, it usually takes about 4 weeks. Then we move on to having the students watch their likes and dislikes for like 3 weeks, and then another 3 weeks in watching their judgments, and another 2 or 3 weeks of watching their clinging. And so that completes the mindfulness practice in everyday life in the beginning, as a beginning course. Okay, so, but we have designed 3 courses. The second course is mindfulness integrating into Noble Eightfold Path. And the last course, the third course, is bringing harmony to conflict. So these 3 courses are built up one on the other. So they're graduated, and we don't accept students who say, oh, I want to take the Eightfold Path. No, you can't do that. You've got to go through the first foundation course, beginning course, then on to the second, and then we teach the bringing harmony to conflict, which built up on the student acquiring the practice, embodiment of practice of this, the foundation course, then learning how to use it in their everyday life through right speech, right thinking, right conduct. And that culminates in how to meet with conflicts in our lives through these 2 foundation practices. So now I have to stop. Next time I'll be talking about how to practice watching likes and dislikes. Thank you, and sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.